We go back 1 year ago after a season full of doom, despair, and disappointment for the Detroit Pistons. It felt like they were going to be at the bottom of that rebuilding process for a long time until we got to the NBA season that just ended. And the Detroit Pistons, well, I can't even say until we got to that season because it took a little while for them to find that stride. But by the time of January, when the new year calendar flipped, when we went from 2024 to 2025, the Detroit Pistons started to play their best basketball of the season. From January to the end of the season, they became one of the best teams in all of the NBA record-wise. And from that point, from January to the end of the season, they were the best defensive team in the NBA, while also for the entirety of the season being one of the best rebounding teams of the NBA. So from after a season of all that turmoil, I'm not going to say all the terrible things that happened that season because we got enough of it. But after that season, the Detroit Pistons were able to go into the following year and skip so many of them steps in that rebuilding process. We seen the Detroit Pistons build an identity. What we just talked about in those stats, them being able to be one of the top defensive rated teams in the NBA and one of the top rebounding rated teams in all of the NBA. And that just goes throughout all the Detroit Pistons teams in the organization history that has been successful. They've been outstanding defensive teams. They've been physical. They've been great rebounding teams, and they also were very team oriented. And that's what we saw with the Detroit Pistons. We saw them establish an identity last season, and we also seen them accomplish that part in the rebuilding phase where you become more competitive. And not that they only become more competitive, but they became extremely more competitive, tripling their win total from the last season, the only team in NBA history to ever do that, and also getting to the NBA playoffs when no one thought they would. And they didn't have to do it via the play-in tournament. They got in as a 6th seed, and they put up a really good fight against the New York Knicks to where the point where it looked like if they handled business or if they made one or two plays differently in a couple of those games, they would have made it to the second round of the NBA playoffs. So it was a big-time season for the Detroit Pistons. And we all know what happens when you have a big-time season. When you have a big-time season, everybody wants you to capitalize on that. They want you to come back, and they want you to try to make that team as much better as possible. And some people think the best way of doing that and the best way of going about that, and this just isn't in the game of basketball, but this is just in sports in general. People always want their team to go out and bring in another star or another superstar to put on the organization to try to get us closer to winning that NBA championship. But in the case of the Detroit Pistons, I think it's a little bit soon to be talking about bringing in another star or trading for another superstar, because this team is just really getting started. And like I said, all that stuff we just said, they just skipped they're still a super duper young team, but they just accomplished so much, and they just got so much better in one season, and they got all these young pieces. I think the Detroit Pistons, all the signs, all the indicators are pointing them to keep building on that type of momentum, because not only did we really see them get better last season, but we still didn't really get to see our Detroit Pistons at full strength. And we look at a guy like Asar Thompson, who missed a lot of time at the beginning of the season, and when the Detroit Pistons got him back and when he started playing starter minutes, that's when the Detroit Pistons became one of the top rated defenses in all of the NBA. So they were without Asar Thompson for a big time of the season. Cade Cunningham, he didn't miss the workload of games that he usually does, but he missed some pivotal games down the stretch of the season dealing with that calf injury. We look at Jaden Ivey, and Jaden Ivey is a guy I'm going to take a little bit time to talk about in depth here, because I think he's a huge part of what the Detroit Pistons want to do in the future and what they're going to do in the future. And I think a lot of people sleep on how good he is and how good he was playing this season. But we look at Jaden Ivey, man, he had like a 3-4 week, a month stretch where his production on the basketball court weekly, it was so gradual, and you could see him getting so much better, so much confident, and so much more comfortable on the basketball court, playing his minutes on the court with and without Cade Cunningham. He looked like he was starting to figure it out, and we were seeing career highs all across the board, career highs in points per game, career highs in field goal percentage, and career highs in 3-point field goal percentage as well. So he was having a hell of a season, and then he just had a very freak Like, it wasn't like an injury where, oh, it might be something wrong with Jaden Ivey's body or his body failed on him. It was a very freak, nasty accident on the basketball court that broke his leg, and he missed about 50% of this NBA season. But he was playing the best basketball. He was playing the best basketball of his very, very young NBA career. But I think we saw so much. I think we saw so much from Jaden Ivey that should have us excited going forward. He was the 5th overall pick in the 2022 NBA draft. So he is a lottery talent. We look at Jaden Ivey's skill set. He has a skill that you really can't teach, and that's elite athleticism. His ability to jump off the ground, his speed, his quickness, it is all top notch. And then he's a guard that can handle the ball, and he's best when he's getting downhill and finishing around the rim. And it seems like he was really polishing up his mid-range game and his three-point shooting. So I'm really looking forward to Jaden Ivey coming back. I'm really looking forward to Jaden Ivey coming back next season and being healthy for the Detroit Pistons, so we can see more of that backcourt of Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. So we had Jaden Ivey, who didn't really get to play too much last season, and we definitely didn't have him in the playoffs. Looking at more players in this very young nucleus for the Detroit Pistons that played pivotal roles in that bounce back season last year. Look at a guy like Jalen Duren, and Jalen Duren was a guy who kind of struggled at the beginning of the season. He struggled with his consistency, really on the defensive side of the ball, really solid rebounding all season. Jalen Duren, we can't expect too much out of him yet. I'm not saying he can't develop more on the offensive side of the ball, but right now he's really a lob threat in that two-man game for Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. So his scoring, the scoring output, we're not expecting too much from him there. I think he scored the ball really well for what his offensive skill set is. But nonetheless, it was a great season for Jalen Duren. He struggled a little bit against guarding the stretch bigs last season, so maybe that's something he can work on. That pick and pop, that pick and roll basketball IQ, because he definitely has the athleticism. He has the speed to guard out there. I think it's just more about him getting more experience and getting a little bit more brain smart on the defensive side of the ball. So I love what we have at the center position with Jalen Duren, and he also has some athleticism that you can't teach. And obviously, you look at the way his body is built, he has some great genetics as well. So they have Jalen Duren. Those were the guys that really got things popping for the Detroit Pistons last season. Of course, I can't say that without the offseason that the Detroit Pistons had. They kind of had the same offseason that they had this year that they had last year, just getting more role players, more perimeter players to try to put around these core of outside players. Last year, we saw them add Malik Beasley. We saw them add Tobias Harris. We saw them add Tim Hardaway Jr. Now, I think next season, we're definitely going to be without Tim Hardaway Jr. And we're going to be without Malik Beasley as well. We all know his situation with the gambling, that FanDuel, it's a dark world, man. FanDuel is a dark world. But nonetheless, looking at what the Detroit Pistons did this offseason, bringing in Duncan Robinson to replace Malik Beasley, another guy, he probably is not going to hit 400, 300 three-pointers like Malik Beasley did for the Detroit Pistons, but he's going to have that same impact out there on the basketball court. Guys are not going to let him shoot the ball, and they also bring in Karis LeVert, another veteran point guard that has helped younger teams get to the NBA playoffs. Being a scoring punch off the bench, he can create his own shot in the pick and roll, probably at his best getting downhill, finishing around the rim. So the Detroit Pistons, I like the roster. It is it's shaping up really well. I can't forget about Ron Holland. Ron Holland was a guy that he didn't get much opportunity last season with the Pistons, but when he did get his opportunity, he played really well. He played really hard. He stuck up for his guys. He looked really good in the summer league. So I'm liking the way that things are shaping up for the Detroit Pistons, and I really can't forget Cade Cunningham, man. He's become my favorite player in the NBA for a long time. LeBron James, he was my favorite player, man. But Cade Cunningham, the way he's came to the Detroit Pistons, the way he's embraced the challenge of getting the Detroit Pistons back into postseason contention, and the way it really seems like he wants to be a leader and lead the team, lead the city to something great, I can't help but to call him my favorite player when he's playing right here in the city. But I think Cade Cunningham, you guys know how I feel about him, bro. He's going to be so damn good, and he had a terrific season last year, putting up 26 plus points per game, putting up putting up more than 9 assists per game and also averaging more than 6 boards per game. So it was a monstrous season for Cade Cunningham. All-star honors, all NBA honors. Like we really predicted, as soon as, I swear, you can go look at all my Pistons video, we said as soon as Cade Cunningham get the right veteran to help around him, the right veteran to help around his other young running mates, he's going to put up some godly numbers. So that's what we seen from him last season. Like I said, big time season for the Detroit Pistons, but it's no time to rush when you have this young nucleus and you really still don't know what they're capable of because they're still so young and they're still growing. So that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below if you agree or disagree, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.